Hello, today we're observing or commemorating Saint Columba, who was one of the great English saints. He was born in 521 and died in 597. He's best known for founding the monastery at Iona, which is a pilgrimage spot for many Christians, but particularly for Anglicans. I just wanted to show you the icon of him because like so many of the early English saints, there's many legends and stories about him. And the pictures along the border here show the different stories. The first picture is, of course, he was on his way to Scotland and his boat was washed ashore on this tiny island that's about 1.5 miles by a mile. And he was allowed to build a monastery on that island. And then we won't go through all the different legends of him, but it's just to show you the variety of ways and the variety of stories that are told about him. And like many of the early English saints, what was saintly about Columba was his ability to kind of be a thin place himself, really communicate easily with the other world and with this world. Because part of what was wonderful about early English Christianity is that it incorporated the legends and images of the other world, not heaven, but a fairy world, a supernatural world, a world where people really believed that there were guides and spirits to help us. And so the stories of Columba, he converted and got along with the Druids, the early other native Christian, indigenous Christian groups. But he was able to communicate both in this world and the other. Somebody said about him, which was quite wonderful, he was a man who loved the world as much as he loved the places of the soul, whose long and sometimes difficult journey never ceased to burn with the light of inspiration and a deep love for all created things. Columba was born in Ireland of a royal family. He was educated early, showed a lot of strong aptitude for poetry, for art, for illuminating manuscripts. He had a run-in with the king. We don't quite know. There are a number of different stories about what that involved, but in response, he was exiled. And he spent all of his life, again, in this kind of in-between place that is the nature of Christian life. He longed for his homeland, but he was overwhelmed with awe at the beauty of the world in which he found himself. His monastery community at Iona was both a base to which other Christians came and a base of learning, a base of producing manuscripts, a base of distributing food and other basics, as well as teaching for the peoples who lived near there. But he also traveled quite widely in all the other islands and land in the north of England to convert the Picts. And he wasn't just, his evangelizing involved providing them with food, education, shelter, training that would allow them to earn their living. I want to read for you briefly the tribute that was written for him by one of the great poets of Ireland at the time of his death. It is not a little story. This is not a story of a fool. It is not one district that is keening, nor grief of one harp string. He, our rightful head, God's messenger, is dead. The teller of words who took away our fear does not return. The learned one who taught us silence is gone from us. Good is his death. He went to God, angels met him. He knew the way he was going. He gave kindness for hatred. He broke the battle against hunger. Healer of hearts, satisfier of guests, shelter of the naked, comfort of the poor, their soul's light, a perfect sage who believed Christ, nor went any from this world who more steadfastly bore the cross. What Columba holds up for us is this wonderful balance between learning and practical living, between faith in a transcendent world and embracing the physical world in which we live. The other interesting thing about Columba was that it was the story of Columba that was the first story of the Loch Ness Monster. The story goes that he was arriving, crossing Loch Lomond, and he saw people, a group gathered on the shore taking care of a man who had been bitten by a sea monster. So he stopped with his men and he asked one of his followers to swim across the lake to a boat that was stranded at the far shore. So the man jumped in, even knowing there was a sea monster. So he jumped in and started swimming, and the sea monster came rising to the surface. And Columba held up his staff and said, "No, you will go no further. You will not touch the man. Go back at once." And the monster, there was a great whirling of waters, and the monster went back down to the bottom of the lake. So legends of the Loch Ness Monster developed from that. But the first real story was a story about Saint Columba. One of his most well-known prayers was the prayer that he might be, he says, "May I keep even the smallest door, the furthest door, the darkest, coldest, the door that is least used, the stiffest door at paradise." And he wasn't just asking that he himself be allowed humbly to be allowed into paradise, to be as close to God as possible. He's reminding us that we are the doorkeepers. He knew that he himself was the means by which people would come to know God. And he reminds us that we ourselves are the doorkeepers for the world. And it's not up to us. We're not just there for the people who are closest to God. When he says, "Let me keep the smallest, furthest, darkest, coldest, stiffest, least used door," he's reminding us that we're available to everybody as an entryway to God, even the people who are furthest and least trusting that they would be worthy, the ones who are most willfully resistant to God's compassionate welcome. We are the doorkeepers for those people. We don't just wait for people to come to us. We go out to those who are least likely to come to us. I was reflecting on Saint Columba this week while I was learning more about George Floyd and watching the memorial services for him and reading about his life. And I was struck, as so many people were, that George Floyd as a teenager aspired, he said, "I want to touch the world." And other people have noted how ironic it is the way that he touched the world. But it reminded me of how much our responsibility is to allow people to make way for other people's aspirations. There should be no person in our community who has dreams that cannot be realized. George Floyd, he needs to be held accountable for the, some poor decisions that he made. But surely we as a culture or a community, we are responsible for creating the ground upon which dreams unfold. And he found his way early, and then he found his way, of course, a few years before he died, when he found new purpose in working for the church and mentoring men who were just beginning new lives after incarceration. But when I think about these two men living 1,500 years apart, I think there's two lessons I want to bring out. One is that the potential of every single life is in the hands of the community in which we are born. In the community, our aspirations are formed. In our community, we find the path to fulfilling them. Not only must we encourage dreams and always point to the larger world beyond our sight, but we must always be mindful that all of our actions have consequences both unseen and unintended, both positive and negative, that we will never see. But we are the doorkeepers who make room for aspirations to be realized and potential to be lived. The second lesson that both men teach us, I think, is that every life has a variety of seasons, and we must live fully in each season. It does no good to fret about the future or to harbor resentment or shame about the past. It's no good to think only about the future or only about what might have been. Indeed, living in the moment is a spiritual discipline that we learn especially from Columba. To be alert in the present, alert to limits and possibilities, to beauty and to dangers around us now, in this moment, not only for ourselves, but as a means through which other people will see what they might not have seen. I want to end with the poem called Simple Joys. If you want your dream to be, build it slowly and surely. Small beginnings, greater ends, heartfelt work grows purely. If you want to live life free, take your time, go slowly, do few things, but do them well. Simple joys are holy. Day by day, stone by stone, build your secret slowly. Day by day, you'll grow too. You'll know heaven's glory. Amen.